Hey guys, remember you can always get the latest episodes and archives at emmettmuckles.com. That's EMMITTMUCKLES.com, which is the home of the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast. Today on our show is Angela Henderson, a business consultant, speaker, and podcaster working with women in their business to move them from stuck, overwhelmed, and in their business to helping them shift to getting the clarity, strategy, and systems they need to grow 5- and 6-figure businesses and beyond. It will also help all those entrepreneurs and business people move beyond as well. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Emmett Muckles. Please visit iTunes, Stitcher, or emmettmuckles.com to listen to all the episodes for free.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Emmett Muckles. 3:30 in the morning till 1 o'clock in the morning, we get it done. We rest when we die. Guess what? Found out something. You know what? You live every day. You die once. You know, some people say you die once. You live once. No. We are energy. We are eternal. Today, my guest is Angela Henderson. How are you?
Hello. I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. And you're just that businesswoman. You're just getting it done. You're making things happen. You're sitting around talking. And she looks like she's like 12 years old. And she's probably like 600. So she's got that skin and that smile and that glow that is just infectious. And you say, there's a spirit about this person that I need to contact and be in contact with. So we initially got together and we were going to talk about the 7 profit pillars needed for sustainable and profitable business, but we'll get to that. So let me ask you, you've been around the world, literally been around the world. Where were you born?
So I was initially born in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And as we were talking pre-recording, it is cold. It is super cold there. And but Canada will always be home. I'm super passionate about Canada. And and what's not to love? We've got hockey, we've got great beer, and we've got Pamela Anderson and, Tim Hortons. So, seriously, it's a lot to love, okay, in Canada.
No. I'll give you the jewel of Canada.
Okay.
Swiss Chalet.
Oh, yep, Swiss Chalet.
Oh my God, that chicken is just off the charts.
It is some good chicken.
It is some good chicken. So what made you move? Because you're now in Australia.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. So
you did a stint in the United States and you're just that hopper, man. What's going on? How did that transpire?
Well, my mom thought it would be super fun to take, an 8th grader and move them all the way from Canada down to Albuquerque, New Mexico, because she was a travel nurse. And so, that went down really, really well. However, you just kind of had to roll with it and embrace things, right? So I then stayed in Albuquerque, New Mexico for my high school and undergrad, finished up my undergrad and headed to Brisbane, which is in Queensland, Australia, did my master's of social work. And then I headed back to North Carolina where I did my clinical prac as a licensed clinical social worker, working with individuals with mental health. So from schizophrenia, depression, autism, anxiety, etc. And then I met an Australian, and now I live over in Brisbane, Australia, again with my husband and two little kids.
So how long have you been in Australia?
So since 2006, so 13 years.
And you haven't acclimated to the speak. Do you code switch when you're around locals? Do you know what code switch is?
Yeah. So listen, I don't say a lot. I might say good day every once in a while, but it's not something that I've grown up with. I might say, how you going is a big thing over here in Australia. Like, hey, how you going? But yeah, pretty much I don't. It's more if I'm writing. So a lot of times, like say the words organization is spelt with a Z versus a S. So people now in America and Canada will kind of write me, your spelling's wrong. How can you have a website and your spelling's wrong? But I'm like, no, it just is that in Australia, you spell it with an S instead of a Z. But besides that, no, I pretty much just still talk Canadian or American.
And so for those Americans who are listening, a Z is a Z.
That's correct. Yes.
Because a lot of people don't know that. I come from Detroit, which is literally next door to Windsor, Ontario, where you could drink at 19 when it.
Yep.
So, I hung out a little bit. But, you're on the road, you're doing workshops, you're doing seminars, you got Facebook group. Well, how did that come about?
So when my son was born, I kind of had this realization that, listen, I do love a good technology and good electronics, but I was just looking at him one day and we'd be given these toys and they were all electronic driven. I was like, there's got to be more to this. I just remember growing up in Canada and you literally just had sticks and you're just playing. And so it was just kind of like what you did. And I was just like, oh my goodness, this stuff is just like doing all the work for him. It's not sparking imagination. It's not sparking creativity. I was like, there's got to be a different way. So don't get me wrong. We still have electronics, yes, but I wanted to try and stimulate him in other ways. So for us, as I then created my first business, which was called Finley and Me. It was an e-commerce based business where we had 1,400 products at our peak. We focused on creating childhood memories through play, love, and travel. And through that, I also then identified that my buyer, which was the moms, even though they were buying for their kids, they were really suffering, some of them were suffering postnatal depression, loneliness and motherhood, and a variety of other things. So I started writing not just about top 10 educational toys, but I also was writing for the moms. And I became one of Australia's leading parenting bloggers here in Australia. I was signed with Netflix as one of their only top 30 bloggers here in Australia and New Zealand. I worked with big companies similar to like your Walmart, Albertsons, like a lot of those big food chains and hotel brands. So I did that. And through that, eventually people wanted to start, picking my brain. And I remember looking at my calendar and I had looked down and over 2 months, I'd done 14 coffee dates. And I'd realized I don't even drink coffee. And I'm having to drive from this appointment for them to pick my brain. And I finally had that aha moment. I was like, hold on a minute. If I charge people for my expertise, I could have a second business. And that's how Angela Henderson Consulting came about.
So you're like the Aussie Vaynerchuk.
I wouldn't go that far, but yes, I would, I would never go that far, but I am, a woman on a mission.
So, now, I want to go back a little bit about when you started your business. Was that a drop ship business?
No. So we looked for different designers and wholesalers from around the world. Some of it, 40% was probably drop ship. 60% though, we held that stock ourselves.
So holding stock, you have to have working capital. Did you go on net 60, net 90, net terms, or did you purchase it at a discount and move the products that way?
Right. So initially we had to purchase because you had to build, obviously, your relationships with the people, right? So you pretty much were like, you want stock, you need to pay us outright from the beginning. And then once they had typically anywhere from 3 to 6 months of a history with you, they then would start giving you 90 days, 120 days out type of thing. But at the beginning, it was all just doubled down. And so the way that I was able to do that is I still worked full time as a mental health clinician and ran my business at night from 7:30 till 11 every single night and on weekends. And working full time still allowed me to make sure that all my bills were paid. In Australia, we have 4 weeks annual leave or vacation leave. We've got 2 weeks sick leave. I get 1 rostered day off a month. And I also was able to buy 4 weeks of purchase leave. So really, I was only working 8 months of the year. In the other 4 months, I was strategically placing my leave around where I needed to grow my business and working nighttime. So for me, my capital came through working full time still.
Yeah, I worked for a European company. I missed the time off. Yep. They had a holiday for just about every saint. Thank them. They led the way. But getting back, so you invested your own capital to acquire these products so that then you could distribute them at a markup, of course, because you wouldn't.
That's correct.
So most people don't have that acumen, and maybe you do, maybe you don't. If you don't, say, I have no clue in it. But if you were in a different situation where you didn't have the physical capital at your disposal, readily at your disposal to use it, what other routes do you think you might have gone for that venture?
In Australia, we're quite fortunate in each of our individual states. There's quite a lot of grants and quite a lot of funding around startups. So for me in Australia, I would have been looking at what grants, like digital marketer grants, there's these tech grants, there's a variety of grants. In Australia, we also have a variety of resources and tools that allow you to kind of tap into a lot of experts. I actually I volunteer my time with the state government here in Queensland as one of their female business mentors. And so again, I'm always looking at other avenues of where I could tap into people's resources that the government is giving me. So for me in Australia, I'd be looking at grants and I'd be looking at the mentoring programs. I'm assuming there'd be other things in different states. Listen, working with family is always tricky. However, again, if you've got wealthy family members that are happy to, you to take a loan and to drop the paperwork accordingly, and you enter into that way, that's another option. But sometimes, again, you may just have to open up. I'm not about people going in an enormous amount of debt, but business, it's not cheap to start a product-based business. You've got to have those resources and money from somewhere. So family, grants, or you may have to open up a credit card, or you might still just have to stay in your 9 to 5.
You said the C word, credit card.
I know. I said the credit card.
I have such a hate relationship with credit cards because they become almost more acceptable than cash in many circumstances. There are circumstances where people have looked at me as if I was the most notorious person in the United States, because I had to go buy something and I literally whipped out $4,000 in cash.
We're like, whoa, that guy's got cash money.
Yeah, they were like, the lady looked at me like, she had this look like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, because most people do large purchases like that on credit terms. And I actually thought about it. I was like, I could do that and just pay it off like in 10 days. But I was like, no, that's how they get you, because you go 10 more days, 30, next thing you know. Starting a business, there are a lot of mistakes that people make. And I know you've pointed out like 4 of them. Can we go over those 4 common mistakes that most people make in business or starting a business?
Yeah. So there's some common trends, I guess, I've seen over my time in being in business. And I guess what I like to talk about is these kind of 4 ones that are really these mistakes or these struggles that are holding people back and really compromising potentially their overall business. And we know small business owners, by the end of year 5, there's so many businesses that have already closed up shop. So one of the key mistakes that I see is lacking clarity on the actions that you need to take in order to get you to where you want to go. It's okay to wing it. So like when you first start, that's okay. I think we all start winging it in our initial stages because we don't know what you don't know. But there comes a time when you actually are going to need to have an actual plan, an actual strategy around what you're doing. Because if you're not clear on what actions need to be taken, you're just going to keep chasing your tail around and around the garden. The second mistake that I see so often with business owners is that shiny object syndrome, right? It's like they're going from one shiny object to the next shiny object. They're thinking they need this tech tool, or they need this new website gadget, or they need X, Y, and Z. But the reality of it is if you just strip back and go back to the foundational elements that you need to grow a business and stop getting distracted and procrastinating with the shiny object syndrome, you're going to go far. You'll be okay in business. But it's the second key mistake I see far too often is people just getting easily distracted by that next thing that they need to buy or purchase, when all they really should be doing is taking action to grow that sustainable and profitable business.
You said something really interesting, because people may not know. You said go back to the basics. What are the basics that people need to grow their business?
Yep, I guess, and those are the key kind of foundational profit pillars that I look for when I'm working with any business. And I guess most of the listeners will probably have heard at some stage the story, The Three Little Pigs. Most businesses that come to me have a business that's made out of hay or a business that's made out of sticks. It's foundationally there. Are structurally there, but the foundations are super weak, and it wouldn't take much of anything for the hay or the straw, aka the business, to collapse. So I'm really big about developing those profit pillars, or the structure, the foundations that need to be. And so that kind of the first foundation I look at is, if you don't know I call it the perfect profit profile. If you don't understand your own key values, if you don't understand what you're passionate about, and if you don't have a good product that's going to sell, you're going to be compromised from the beginning. The saying goes is you can't polish a turd. If you've got a bad business idea and if you've got a bad product, it doesn't matter how much money you put or how much capital you have. It's like pushing, shit up a hill. It's not going to do anything to make it any better. All right. So I guess when I kind of look at that first profit pillar is really understanding your own profit profile and knowing what you stand for, what your values are, because that's going to be seen throughout your content strategy, your funnels, and your emails. The next thing that I look at is really your website. So many people are building assets, or what they think is an asset, on their social media platforms. Facebook owns you, LinkedIn owns you, everyone owns you. So if you're not looking at building your website, which is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, making sure that you've got solid, clear messaging, solid, clear to actions that people can take, and they know exactly what you do, then you're going to run into a problem. So again, this is another really great foundational pillar that is necessary for that future growth. People don't realize that most people in this day and age, you've got anywhere from 5 to 6 seconds from the time they land on your website for you to tell them what you do, how you're going to solve their pain point, and if not, they're bolting, right? So that's kind of the second thing that I really look at with those profit pillars.
Yeah, that bounce rate can be really high.
Can so high, or they're just throwing their items on their website and nothing's SEO optimized, so search engine optimization. If you're wanting a business, you're not just looking at the short-term game, you're wanting the long-term growth behind that. So again, really building that second profit pillar, which is that profit-ready website, you need to have it structurally set up, you need it to be a conversional website, and you need to make sure that you've got that longevity there with the SEO strategy in place too.
So that's 2 pillars you basically gave me. Now I know that there's about 7 of them that you have.
So yes, there are. There are a few more, obviously. The thing is, those 2 is, so if you've got your messaging down, you've got a really great product or service, you've got a conversional website. The next thing I talk about is looking at your marketing strategies. So the money maker map is the next profit pillar, and really looking at your ecosystem. How are you channeling people in your ecosystem from going from free to low ticket and to higher ticket and so forth? You need to be able to understand how are they consuming information. So I know my audience consumes information via blog posts, via video, and via podcasting. So that's the content that I create. It's the free content that I also give them. And I move them from that free content into my lower ticket prices. So again, you really need to be thinking about how are you taking a client from cold, getting them warmed up, and converting them to a hot client when that transaction has actually been done with you and for them. So yes,
man, you're just like a ball. You know, now I understand why people like just come and they probably beg for your time, because it is part of your spirit. You've done it, and this is what's really cool. This is why I am really into this interview, is that sometimes you can see individuals who are doing the work, but they haven't been through it, and then other people, it is about their existence, which is a part of them. That's what I see in you, and everything you're saying is so spot on. So thank you for that to the audience. But I want to continue with those pillars, because it's so integral to the growth of a business.
Right. And so the next profit pillar that I've really honed in on is, if you've got a conversional website, you then want people, when they're landing, if you get 1,000 people on your website per month, you want to obtain those email addresses somehow and being in list building, because without list building, those 1,000 people are going to leave and they potentially are never going to hear from you again. So profit pillar number 4 is email is not dead, and you still need to be building that email list, because if you're building your stuff on social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, and stuff goes down and they close you down and you don't have a list to build to, again, your business potentially could collapse within like literally days, weeks, and months. So profit pillar 4 is really about making sure that you understand how to build your email list. And obviously, once you get your email list, that goes into profit pillar 5 is what to do with that email list. So when I look at businesses that I work with, as I say, okay, we've got this, but now how are we going to put them in the top of funnel down to bottom of funnel? So we really need to hone in on your sales funnel. So many people come to me in my discovery call and they're like, yeah, I've got like 8,000 people on my email list. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's gold. How often are you emailing them? Oh, once every 6 months. And I'm like, what? What do you mean once every 6 months? I'm like, because you're paying for them to be on Active Campaign or ConvertKit or whatever. I'm like, you're not utilizing them. No, I don't really have time for that. I'm like, you're leaving money on the table. So if you have an email list and then you have profit pillar number 5, which is your sales funnel, they need to be speaking to each other. So For example, my Facebook community, the Australian Business Collaborative, I ask 3 questions that Facebook allows me when they come into my Facebook group. What is your business? What are you struggling with? And do you want to stay up to date with the most podcasts, etc.? And then I zap that into a funnel. I zap that with ActiveCampaign, and ActiveCampaign then puts them into a funnel for me. So I then do a 5-day nurture sequence talking about X, Y, and Z, and then I have an offer to go into my free masterclass, the ultimate 4-step framework for increasing sales and getting more clients. So there's always funnels that can be had. It can be from a Facebook group. It could be to your homepage opt-in. It could be on a podcast. So, you really need to be thinking about profit pillar number 5, which is about your sales funnels and how are you bringing those clients along that journey.
There's a lot of information out here today, and there are a lot of
yes.
who are claiming everybody's selling to you. It used to be you turned on the television and probably every 7 minutes someone was selling to you. Now you are continually being sold to, and you don't know if that individual company person is the right fit for you. How would you say to someone, this is how you need to be authentic, or how do you break through that minutia to find your perfect customer?
So for me, I'm all about human to human marketing. There's a lot of stuff around B2B and B2C, where H to H is I'm all about creating the experience and the interaction one faces with a particular brand. And so for me, is I show up when other people haven't. So I'm the one that shows up in my Facebook community. I'm the one that's showing up on my Instagram. I'm the one that's making the phone calls to my retreat people. So again, how do you break through that? Is you've got to be present. It's not just about being consistent. It's about treating people like humans and creating that experience and that interaction. So often people just want to get the transaction and it's over and done with. Remember, most recent studies have shown that your customers are humans. So treat them like human beings, because if you can treat them like human beings, you're going to build that trust, that credibility, and that authority. And just because you're being authentic. So I know that word gets tossed around a lot, but I think it's important that you've got to break through the noise and go back to, again, those human to human elements and make sure you're treating your people like humans.
It's so poignant that you say that, because I see some really good products that gather my interest, and then the humans turn me off.
Yes.
Because it seems like they really don't care. They're really just trying to get my dollars. It's almost like a canned speech. Hey guys, I've got this great, I'm done. So what you're saying makes really good sense. Or the other thing where someone seems like they're genuine, and I've had this, where you think there's a human to human connection, and then you find out that the connection you had becomes a bot.
Yep.
Totally turned me off. This is a great product, but it just so turned me off, because I was like, I want to, when you go for a product or when you go for a class, you almost want a mentor. You're looking for someone to help you along. And then when you get introduced to the bot system, it fails you. And I believe that's why a lot of people don't, they give their initial investment, but then they fail, or they flaunter, and it just goes away. So, these things that you're saying are so poignant. I'm so glad you're on the show.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And my thing is too, is, ways that I do it is, for example, I run Australia's leading 4-day, 3-night women in business retreat. And I put 2 hours in my diary aside 3 weeks out of the event. And I called all 50 people, right? Now, some people would go, oh my God, you picked up the phone. But the thing is, it was really important for me for them to know. I could have had my VA do it. I could have had my team do it, but I wanted to connect with them. I wanted to hear from them, like, hi, how are you? Are you excited about the retreat? Are you nervous about the retreat? What can I do to support you? This is what it's going to look like, Now, this funny thing is most people don't pick up their phones anymore if they notice a number that they don't know.
That's
so
true.
Really, if I looked at the data, I reckon 25% of people I spoke to, and the other 75%, it went to a voicemail. But those people I did speak to, 4 of them emailed me that night, thanking me in some way, shape, or form, going, I've never had anyone pick up the phone and just have that conversation with me. Some of the conversations were literally 4 minutes. Others were 10 minutes, but I was okay with that because I wanted to connect with them and for them to know that I wasn't just treating them as a transactional, number.
That's so refreshing to hear. That is so refreshing to hear. What's on your future? What's on your future radar? What haven't you tackled yet that sitting in the back of your cranium, you're like, oh yeah, it's coming.
Yeah. And it is coming. So my big goal for 2020 is to break into the US market. Australia has been really great over the last decade and if things are good. But, my mission is to help 5,000 women between now and 2025 to give them the tools, community, and resources they need to grow sustainable and profitable businesses. And though I can do that in Australia, there's much bigger things out there in the world. So I will break into the US market next year. I've got my first speaking event in Phoenix. I've got lined up to speak at 2 potential other places this week. I'm actually having phone calls with them. So my goal next year is to break into the US market.
So when you get to Chicago, I'll be your MC. I'll introduce you.
Okay, perfect. That would be fun. I think we would it could be dangerous. We could have too much fun and no work, but I'm all about play. You've got to have fun and be playful in your business, or I think things become stagnant.
Oh, I'm a fireball on stage. Oh, people, yeah. We won't talk about that. Anyway. So will you move to the United States or will you just stay where you are?
No, I love Australia. Australia's been a really great country, especially when it comes to raising kids, right? So it's a wonderful, beautiful country. The sun shining here in Brisbane right now, where we live in Queensland. It's pretty much sunny 365 days a year. My kids walk outside and go to the stores with me with no shoes on, like a large portion of Australians do. Whereas back home in Canada or other parts of the US, they'd have to, it takes an hour just to get them bundled into their snowsuits and out the door. So I'm very grateful for what Australia gives my family and I, and for the weather. And I'm only a small airplane right away.
So where can people find you? Where can they?
Yeah. So people, the best place to find me is just by going to my website, angelahenderson.com.au. And depending on how I can help you or how you consume information, my podcast is over there. My free masterclass is over there. My Facebook community is over there. And obviously the different ways you can work with me, either through one-to-one consulting, my 12-month group coaching program, or my retreat.
All right. So we're going to do an exercise here.
Sure.
You're going to have to close your eyes. And
okay.
Listen to my words.
Okay.
So you're sitting on the couch. Your kids are gone. Your husband, they're out somewhere. So you have about like 12 hours to yourself. And you sit down on the couch. You got you a nice cup of something that you enjoy.
Yep.
And then you're just like, and you're enjoying the silence. And all of a sudden, there's a knock at the door. You get up. You go to the door. You open the door. And there sits before you is your 21-year-old self. And she says to you, you look very young.
Yep.
And then she says, how can I make sure, what do I need to know to make sure I get where you are now?
Yep. There would be two things I would say. Financial literacy is very key. If you don't know your numbers, you don't know your budget, you don't know where you're going, you're going to have a very hard time growing collectively, both in business and personally. And the second thing I would say is pay to play. You need to pay to play in order to get you to where you want to go. So I spend about $40,000 a year connecting with some of the top entrepreneurs around the world. And it's through those connections that have landed me with speaking, growing, and a variety of other things. So start off by going to a free event, then paying a $10 event, then a $20 event. Then you might pay for a $1,000 ticket and so forth. But the sooner you learn to pay to play, the faster you'll grow again, both personally and professionally.
Awesome. I want to thank you so much for being on the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. You have a brilliant day.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you know how we conclude, everybody. You were born a billionaire. Think about it. You need me to do the math? I'll do it for you. So there was this entity, a yin, and then there was this other entity, a yang. And somehow they met in the middle and they shared some material. One gave some to another. And then through the power of the cosmos, a sprinkle was made and a dance was caused. And 2 became 4, 4 became 8, 8 became 16. And 30 days later, you were a billion cells. You weren't even on the earth yet. You were just housed. So then when you came in 9 months later or something like that, you were trillions of cells. So we are human beings. That's HUE-man beings. Hue are people under the sun. We all have a color because we're not see-through. We are made in the image of man. That's our creator that we've all collectively agreed upon. The problem we have is the being part. That's the experience. So it's not that deep because we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. Don't let it get you down. Remember, there is no past, there is no future, there is only now, and it is forever changing. Whatever you're going through right now will change. Remember that. It's like a sine wave. It goes up, it goes down, but it always comes back through zero, so it gets neutralized. If you're at the end of your rope, here's what I need you to do. I need you to tighten up your grip because there's going to be a little bit left. Tie a knot and keep hanging. Just hang there and rest. And then when you feel that power going back into your body, pull yourself up on that rope and start again. Till next time, this is Emmett with the Billionaire Lifestyle. Love you all. Peace.